Welcome to the Explainer. So let's jump straight in. Look, we have absolutely all been there, right? You set this massive new goal, you are totally fired up, you've got the vision, and then boom, week 3 rolls around and the whole shebang just kind of falls apart. Why does that happen? Well, today we're answering that exact question by breaking down the actual, literal engine of success. We're looking at the ultimate battle. Motivation versus discipline. And as you'll see, relying on the wrong one is quietly setting you up to fail right from the start.
To get us going, let's look at the mindset of India's absolute greatest footballer, Sunil Chhetri. When he was asked what discipline actually is, he didn't give some deep, poetic answer. He just hit the nail on the head and said, discipline simply means promising myself I'll do something and then actually doing it. What is so fascinating here is what he completely leaves out. There is zero mention of motivation. No mention at all of needing to feel inspired. Just make a promise and follow through. In fact, when his friends complain about lacking the motivation to hit the gym, his response is pretty blunt. He basically says, it's not about how you feel. Sad, down, unmotivated, doesn't matter. Going to the gym is his job, and he just goes.
And honestly, that brilliantly illustrates the uncomfortable math of high achievement. If we look at elite athletes, top performers, literally anyone who has built something real and lasting, motivation accounts for maybe 1% of what actually got them to the top. 1%. The other 99%, that is pure, unadulterated discipline. We put so much stock in feeling ready, right? Feeling inspired. But the actual data and the track records of the elite tell a completely different story.
All right, moving on to section 1, the motivation trap, and exactly why motivation fails.
I mean, we all know the January 1st trap so intimately. You buy all the new gym gear, you subscribe to 5 different fitness channels, and you are just running on pure excitement about the new you. But then, week 3 hits. Reality knocks. Work gets super stressful. You catch a cold. Or, your favorite show drops a new season. And that motivation, the exact thing you were leaning your entire plan on, it just quietly disappears. Relying entirely on a feeling is a fundamentally flawed strategy, mainly because feelings are, by their very nature, temporary.
To really drive this home, let's look at the timeline of competitive bodybuilding. Okay, it's a super extreme example, I know, but it perfectly highlights this flaw. Think about it. Training twice a day, 6 days a week, eating 8 pre-planned meals where food literally stops being about taste and just becomes fuel. Even with elite genetics, it takes a minimum of 10 years of this brutal grind just to be competitive globally. Listen to me, nobody feels motivated for 10 years straight. You don't even feel motivated for 10 weeks straight. If you rely on a feeling to do the work, you're gonna wash out. You absolutely need something much sturdier underneath.
Which brings us to section 2, spark versus engine. This is the core paradigm shift. To separate the myth from the reality here, we really have to look at how these two function side by side. Motivation, that is your initial spark. It's tied to your why, and it is incredibly useful as a sort of emotional buffer when things get tough early on. But, and this is absolutely crucial, it is strictly temporary. Discipline, on the other hand, is a mechanism. It operates completely independent of your mood, making it a permanent fixture you can actually rely on. Expecting motivation to carry you for months or years is literally like expecting a single match to heat your house all winter long. It's a spark. It is not a fuel source.
So the real point is how we define this engine, and it totally brings to mind Abraham Lincoln's timeless wisdom. Discipline is choosing between what you want now and what you want most. Think about it. Right now, at 6 a.m., you might really want to stay in that warm bed, but what you want most is the career or the body or the life you're building toward. Discipline is simply the mechanism that keeps choosing your ultimate goal over temporary comfort, even when that temporary comfort is screaming at you. And the amazing part? This framework isn't just about going to the gym. It scales up to history's absolute biggest challenges.
Let's check out section 3, the historical proof of enduring commitment.
Consider Nelson Mandela's commitment. The man spent 27 years in prison, yet he remained completely, unwaveringly committed to his cause. Or think about Martin Luther King Jr., organizing and marching through just relentless resistance for years. You simply do not sustain decades of struggle on daily motivational hype. You just don't. What carried these historical giants was a decision made once, deeply, and then honored repeatedly, regardless of how any single day actually felt.
There is this incredibly powerful saying, first we make our decisions, then our decisions make us. The true target here isn't forcing yourself through willpower every single day forever. That sounds exhausting, right? The goal is to build a habit so deep that it stops requiring a daily negotiation. Exactly like brushing your teeth.
You don't debate it every morning, you just do it. You need to have already decided, once, that showing up is simply what you do now. Okay, so how do we actually build this? Let's get into the highly actionable part of our explainer.
Moving right along to Section 4, Building Discipline Through 5 Actionable Steps.
So here is our blueprint. We've got 5 concrete steps to systematically build an unbreakable engine of discipline. First, start with 0 willpower tasks. Second, give it 3 weeks. Third, let good habits recruit others. Fourth, handle bad days differently. And fifth, let your environment push you. Let's dive straight into step 1.
Step 1 is all about starting with something that requires almost 0 physical willpower. Remember Sunil Chhetri? He actually advises people to start with sleep and food rather than jumping straight into the gym. Why? Well, because putting your phone away by 9 p.m. or cutting out added sugar, that isn't about physical strength, it's about restraint. And restraint is a much, much smaller ask than deadlifting your body weight. When you focus on restraint, you build these small wins. You prove to yourself that you can keep a promise, and that proof really starts to compound.
Step 2 requires giving the habit roughly 3 weeks to actually take root. Day 1 relies super heavily on willpower, sure, but by day 10, your body is adapting, and by day 20, it starts to feel almost automatic. The sources highlight this amazing example of someone cutting out artificial sugar. For 19 days, they fully expected it to be brutal, but by the end of it, the craving had essentially vanished. The vital takeaway here for us is, don't judge a new discipline by how brutal day 3 feels. Judge it by how automatic day 20 feels. Moving right into step 3, let good habits recruit more good habits. Think of it like a domino effect. If your anchor habit is sleeping early, well, that naturally leads to waking up early, which gives you time for a short walk, which puts you into mindset to drink water instead of reaching for snacks. One solid anchor habit naturally nudges you toward all these other good choices without any extra effort on your part. Seriously, let the habits do some of the heavy lifting for you.
Now, step 4 is a piece of advice that might really surprise you. It's about handling bad days differently than good days. On genuinely bad days, and I mean when you're facing real exhaustion, grief, or severe stress, it is entirely okay to rest, eat the comfort food, watch the show, recover. True discipline does not mean punishing yourself when you are already down. But on the good days, when you have the energy and no real excuse, that is when discipline needs to show up fully. Be strict and make 0 excuses when you're actually capable.
And finally, step 5, let your environment push you. Even elite athletes need outside pressure. The source notes that during an off-season break, it's super easy to just relax until your teammates start posting their training photos in the group chat. Suddenly, that pull back to the gym is almost automatic. Surrounding yourself with committed people provides this essential external pressure for when your own internal drive inevitably disappears. So, where does all this lead? What is the final result of keeping all these little promises?
Let's look at Section 5, the ultimate payoff, which is trust in yourself.
What is really beautiful about this whole concept is that we're reframing discipline entirely away from this outdated idea of self-punishment. At its core, discipline is just a specific, quiet kind of pride. It's the pride that comes from saying, I'll do this, and then actually doing it. Not because you felt like it, but simply because you said you would. This action builds absolute trust in yourself, which I promise you is infinitely more valuable and powerful than any single passing day of motivation could ever be. Which brings us to the end and leaves us with one highly provocative question. What small promise will you keep today? I want to challenge you right now. Pick one low-barrier promise to keep for the next 3 weeks. Just one. Put the phone away at 9 p.m. Or drink water instead of a snack. Do it not because you feel motivated every day, because trust me, you won't. But do it just because you said you would. That is exactly how the engine is built. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I really hope you start building that engine today.